Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
How is my sound?
Hello, everyone. We're supposed to start at 4:20, but there are a few technical issues that we're just sorting out, and we'll take a few minutes. If you could just be a little patient, and we'll be with you shortly. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. If you can just settle down because we are about to start. Okay, and right. Thank you, everybody. My name is Waqas Hassan. I am the regional lead for Asia at the Global Digital Inclusion Partnership. I know it's been a long conference. You know, most of us are tired, just want to go home, see our families. So I can at least promise you this, that this is going to be the last one, absolute last one for the whole conference. So bear with me because we have a fantastic panel to discuss about a very important issue, an issue that probably we have been discussing in bits and pieces in the various sessions during the event. But this is where we want to just summarize all of it and, you know, of course, take your opinion as well when we get to the Q&A. So what we're going to talk about today is harnessing innovation, while we also try to balance the risk associated with it. If we look at this human development and the digital development overall, innovation has been the bedrock of everything. We are here what we are because of the innovations that have happened over the years. And while going through that path of innovation, I think you would all agree that internet is actually the most empowering tool that is out there now. And it has empowered communities, it has created so many opportunities, but at the same time, there are risks associated to it as well. There are online and offline risks, which we need to cater for in order to make sure that the next billion, that the next wave of connectedness that we're talking about remains safe online and are keen to join the internet, you know, just to remove the fear of the unknown that they have. And for this, we have a fantastic panel. I think you would recognize all of them probably, but I'll just go through very briefly on who they are. First up, we have with us Raj Singh. Raj is the CEO of APrIGF Foundation. Raj has been a former serial entrepreneur. He has done a lot of public policy work, community engagements. across the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. And we're honored to have him. With him, we see Audrey Tang, who has been as most of our Taiwanese friends here would know that was the first digital minister for Taiwan, and also one of the Time 100 most influential people honoree in AI. So we're very honored to have him as well. Alongside Audrey, we have Professor Salma Abbasi, who is the CEO of E-Worldwide Group. Salma is a technology visionary who has done a lot of work for social inclusion, community empowerment, digital literacy, AI. She is an engineer by profession as well. So she has a multi-dimensional profile. And we have Michael Karimian with us, who is the Microsoft Director of Policy, and Michael and his team work to champion and counter the online threats in cybersecurity, and he will be representing the platforms for this panel. So this is how we're going to do this. First of all, I'll take brief remarks and opening remarks from all of the panelists very briefly, and then we're going to have one guiding question followed by an interaction with all of you, and we're going to close with some closing statements. So I request everybody on the panel to please share your remarks with first up Raj, and 3 minutes for each speaker for this particular segment. So Raj, I request you to please share.
Thank you, Wakas, and it's wonderful to be here in Taipei. Of course, congratulations to the hosts and the organizers for putting this together. I think we've had a good week. The rain's tried its best, but I think we've done better inside the room, so that's been good. So this was an interesting topic for the panel discussion. When I saw what it was when they sent the information to me, it was a little bit about everything, right, if you really look through what the description is. And the other thing that struck me is that, we talk about innovation. The question that I was asking myself, what type of innovation are we talking about, right? Because innovation comes in many ways, right? Yes, there's the technology innovation, which I think, most of us, that's why we're here in this room. It's what led to the internet and everything that runs on top of the internet. But there's also innovation that happens at the very local level that we sometimes don't hear about. And I just, instead of giving you a speech about innovation and my thoughts on it, I thought I'd just share a little example of why I thought this localized innovation was such a cool thing. A couple of months ago, I was in India with one of our project grantees who were looking at seeing how they could build telecom towers in rural areas in South Asia. If any of you have worked in that field, building a telecom tower, it looks easy, but it's not. There's a lot of things you need to take into account. One of the biggest problems is how do you get the steel to that particular location? How do you get the welders in place and build up your tower, et cetera, et cetera? So this grantee, what they did, they said, why can't we build these towers from bamboo? And bamboo is, of course, in parts of South Asia and Southeast Asia, it's everywhere, right? It's another tree of life in our part of the region. The coconut tree is the other one, right? And so it was fascinating for me to go and see what they had actually done and what they were trying to do. And they were using innovation to actually do the modeling to create the tower. And I've worked with telecom towers in a past life. And your typical telecom tower is your pyramid sort of structure, right? But they came with something that looked very, very different. And my first reaction was, ooh, I'm not sure this is going to actually stand up in high winds. They said, no, we've done all the simulations. Now we're building the prototype, and we're going to see and measure, put sensors on it, and ensure that this actually works. And the reason they wanted to build it out of bamboo is so that you don't have to ship steel and iron and bolts and all that to places in the Himalayas or to places in parts of Southeast Asia, right? So that, for me, was the interesting bit about innovation. So I'm just going to leave it there. I thought I'd take a slightly different perspective to the question. Thanks.
Yes, I think that's an excellent perspective. I think what you're talking about is sort of a community innovation, to connectivity. Audrey.
Yeah, thank you, and for the host for hosting this wonderful event. I think in Taiwan, when we think about innovation, we think not just about technological innovation, but also about social innovation, exactly as Rajneesh have described. Because innovation, unlike the simple application of technologies, is never morally neutral. Innovation is usually embedded with human aims and values, and especially when faced with common threats or common risks that mobilizes everybody. So in preparing for this panel, I was just reading a new report from the Doublethink Lab. It's called Taiwan Power, and it's usually phrased as a way to a model to counter foreign information manipulation and interference, so like FEMI resilience. But I think it's also a kind of general purpose model that can explain the Taiwanese way of balancing the innovation socially against the emerging risks. So in this case, I think many of you know, for the past 11 years, Taiwan has been the most targeted place in all the world, where, according to VDEM, when it comes to foreign information manipulation. Yet, we're the most free place in Asia Pacific, according to Freedom House, when it comes to freedom on the net. And so the way that we see it, it is not about a trade-off between human rights on one side and online safety and risk management on the other side, but rather we share the same purpose to take both sides and also ensure that there is an organic assembly of civil society actors. And this takes a very different nature when it comes to the government's role. So the government would need to act as a kind of funding body, but without kind of direct top-down control when it comes to counter disinformation and counter information manipulation. And also the W in power stands for whole society. So it is not just the government or the private sector, but a social sector, which includes universities, civil society organizations, and independent media as well. And we all co-evolve when the new threats come, so like synthetic media, AI, deepfakes, and so on, which I'll talk about later. But the most important in the power abbreviation to me is remit bound, so that each organization is institution in their particular sector work on their own specialisms, but with full coordination with other parts of the sectors, so as not to duplicate the labors of others and maximizing the collective efficiency. So I'm happy to illustrate that with more examples later, but if you search for Taiwan Power Model from Doublethink Lab, you can see the whole analysis.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Audrey, for sharing this powerful power model. Next up, Salma.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. Again, I'm really appreciative of Asia Pacific IGF for inviting me to this platform. I have learned a lot over the last 3 days. What I'd like to share about innovation comes in twofold. One is similar to Raj from the grassroots level, and the other is with academia and university with the innovation hubs. So recognizing that 50% of the population here is definitely ladies, which is great to see you all. One I'd like to share is the power dynamics, the cultural social barriers we face accessing education, accessing money, and of course mobility. So we did a project in India, a case study with on the ITU website, working with the self-help groups, and how empowering them with ICT knowledge, the power of the mobile phone, and actually helping them become monitors of implementation of government programs. We changed their position to be part of the panchayat system, which is a very big deal. If those of you who understand the Indian system, it's very male-dominated in the rural areas. And that, to me, is a major win, using a creative method at the grassroots to tackle a barrier to these critical things that prevent empowerment of marginalized women in rural areas. The second is an example of Pakistan, which was in a rural area in the Sindh, which was women were not having access to the health clinics because they had to be traveling with a man for their own safety, and their husbands, brothers, or sons were busy working in the fields. So the innovation program we came up with was to implement remote consultation first in a primary healthcare center and partnering with a fertilizer company so that there was a reason why the male agriculture economic empowerment, but the other way around. So soil testing, access to fertilizer, access to seeds. So, okay, wife or sister, come along with us and you can access the doctor. So it's really finding those win-win scenarios with unique partnerships that wouldn't typically come to yourself. That also brings about sustainability. And I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Salma. Michael?
Thank you, Wakas, and it's a pleasure to be here and join this panel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I think we should begin by recognizing that the people who have the most to gain from being brought online are people who also have the lowest levels of cyber resilience. Bringing more people online is essential, but of course that sadly widens the cyber threat landscape. Cyber threats such as cybercrime, state-sponsored operations, cyber influence operations really challenge the integrity of digital spaces. And we need to stress the importance of proactive measures, including transparency, accountability, and collaboration across sectors to address these challenges. That includes the need for a rules-based order, including in cyberspace. Promoting a rules-based order in cyberspace where responsible behavior by all stakeholders, including governments, corporations, civil society, and individuals, is crucial. Cyberspace governments must, of course, ensure that innovation does not come at the expense of security, stability, or human rights, exactly as Audrey said. And so that begins, I think, by recognizing the corporate responsibility to respect human rights. This means reinforcing that all corporations of all sizes in all locations have a responsibility to respect human rights in their business activities, particularly in the products that they develop and sell, but also in their business relationships. And whilst technology companies, including Microsoft, do strive to uphold these principles, there is, of course, room for improvement and growth. The complexities and challenges of implementing human rights standards globally, especially in regions and locations where the levels of digital maturity or regulatory frameworks are low, need to be recognized as well. And this, of course, this process requires continuous learning, adaptation, engagement with local communities and stakeholders to address these challenges meaningfully and in effective ways. I think as well it also demonstrates the importance of legislation. It's great to see the growing body of legislation that exists around the world, but actually perhaps to a lower extent in this region. Regardless of whether there's innovation or not, legislation or not, we need inclusive innovation because the need to bridge the digital divide, in particular for underserved regions and communities, is essential to ensuring access to next generation technologies. That does mean that innovation needs to be inclusive and accessible so that new technologies empower rather than marginalize communities. But I know that in this room, that's a message that's relatively well understood. So I'll just end by saying that the balance between innovation, risk, and inclusion is an ongoing process. It does require constant vigilance, adaptation, and dialogue, just as we will do today.
Excellent. Don't you love this panel? Everybody is sticking to the timeline, making their point well. I think this is a great start. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So, Raj, you spoke about this community social innovation, and we all, I think, do realize that the world has miserably failed in achieving, and the SDGs and MDGs and the promises of getting connectivity to everybody out there. Now, when that person who puts his time and effort, to have that community infrastructure out there, and once that person gets online, that's where his online experience starts, that person's, right? But how can we make sure that that experience is a safe experience? How can we ensure that the new joiners feel safe and more secure on the internet?
Okay, so yes, pretty strong fighting words there, Wakas. Miserably failed MDGs and SDGs. Someone from the UN here? Look, yes, for those of us who've been working in this field for the last couple of decades, we always knew the last couple of billions was going to be the hardest to connect, right? So let's, I think, also recognize that. The second thing is most of those remaining billions are in places which have other issues as well, right? It could be terrain. In many places, it's an economic issue as well. So affordability comes into play. We keep on talking about affordability, but I think it goes just beyond, is it $10 a month for my subscription or is it $5 a month, right? You need to get the device in, you need, the socio-cultural issues at play as well. So I think we have to be mindful of that. The other issue is that, for the rest of us, maybe most people in this room, we have the benefit of the last 25, 30 years of internet and digital development, right? And that's why we are perhaps a bit more digitally literate, although I make mistakes online too, falling for scams or silly stuff and all that. But the fact is we still have a level of understanding that, what's good, what's bad, how to be safe. And there's lots of literature around and training and things that we can do, including from ISPs and our companies and so on. But now we're expecting that someone who's never really experienced the internet and the digital world, they'll come online and they'll be secure from day one. I think that's a fallacy, right? That's not going to happen. Because they necessarily don't have the background, nor the training, nor the knowledge to be able to cope with what's coming. For them, it's this new thing, it's a new world, right? And they want to experience it as much as possible. And you know, back in the old days, we used to say, don't believe everything you read on the internet. That still remains true, but how do you ensure that the most recently connected actually understand what that means? You know, just because they receive an email or see a picture or a video or get sent a meme, suddenly they believe it. And I think that also has, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb here. The new toxic online environment that the whole world is creating, I think it also has a role to play here, right? Misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, and that propaganda is at all levels, and it's not just political anymore. It comes ethnic level, you know, socio-cultural level. It's just getting out of control, frankly. And now you expect someone very recently online to be able to deal with all that, you know. So yes, we need digital literacy, but I think it's got to be very localized digital literacy. And how do you ensure that, you know, someone in a remote village in the Himalayas or in a small atoll in the Pacific is able to cope with that from day one? It's actually a very hard question to answer. I will say we have some sort of collective responsibility here, but how do we ensure that they actually feel safe when they're online? So I'll stop there, because I don't know, speaking of what.
No, thank you. Wise words spoken. You mentioned about online propaganda and, you know, all of the misinformation and the toxic environment and all. But I'll come to Audrey now. Audrey, with your government background and, you know, been working as a digital minister for over 7.5 years, and we do see governments coming up with these digital transformation agendas, you know, I mean, there are all sort of frameworks and digital inclusion promises and all. But how can governments actually facilitate, you know, a safe online experience, you know, while making sure that the innovation still stays in the society?
Yeah, I think the key here, again, is whole society response. When I was in the government, the idea is to build not just digital literacy, but rather digital competence, because literacy is when you consume and competence is when you contribute, right? And we do know that it is not the checked facts that inoculates young minds against propaganda and misinformation, but the process of going through this collective fact-finding journey together that inoculates a mind. And because thinking like journalists, like taking different perspectives in a more stereoscopic vision and things like that, does have an effect, and it's like immunity, antibodies in a mind. And so for the government, I think the most important idea is just to refrain from stepping in and disrupting the process of people learning how to build this kind of digital competence online. But the government must always communicate very clearly, and we have found that pre-bunking works much better than debunking, because debunking works after the fact when somebody has already seen the issue. But nowadays, for example, we already know during election times there will be deepfake videos, there will be voice cloning, there will be people accusing the election tallying process is rigged and so on. You know that like ahead of the time, right? So what really worked is just to let people know that there's deepfakes coming. And I, 2 years ago, deepfaked myself, showing to the entire country how that is done. And so we moved from a kind of content level detection to more like an actor level. So nowadays in Taiwan, we do have ways to authenticate. For example, when the government sends out SMS, it shares the 111 number, and so that people do know that this comes from the government. And this exactly same content coming from any other longer code does not actually come from the government. And the other private sectors, banks and so on, are taking the same short codes now as well. And finally, I'll make the point that anything that does regulate the internet platforms need to consult broadly. And in Taiwan, we have run alignment assemblies, a kind of deliberative polling process, where we sent 200,000 SMS from this 111 number to random numbers across Taiwan, so that we have a statistically representative sample of people, 450 strong, and they deliberated in 45 rooms of 10 each online in video, so that we can take the conclusion after deliberation of their wide rough consensus, for example, requiring the advertisement platforms to do KYC, to have digital signatures before posting things online, so that you cannot just arbitrarily deepfake somebody to sell a scam or things like that. You have to secure that person's KYC, that person's permission in order to post that. And this is the kind of law that is already in place in Taiwan, is being implemented this month by the larger social media advertisement platforms. And the reason why it got through so quickly, I believe, is partly because it was co-created by the stakeholders in this way.
Thanks, Audrey. Salma, Raj spoke about this toxic environment, and Audrey spoke about this digital competence that is required. All of this is supposed to lead to digital equality, you know, so that everybody is an all-inclusive society and an online experience. How do you think that the technologies are supposed to create a level playing field for all, right? But how can we ensure, and what are the critical factors with which we make sure that that actually happens?
I think that's really difficult to ensure, and I think I'm so happy to have met you. I think that we have to acknowledge that this is difficult because it's a dynamic, changing landscape where the inequalities are actually broadening. What we need to be able to, in my opinion, is the consultation part that we've said, and I think over the last couple of days. But probably I've got, I think, 4 recommendations. The first is, within the communities that we're focusing on, is identify who they are. Definitely, so you can have targeted intervention, starting with awareness, because lack of awareness is a big culprit. And within this, not just the digital skills that you were talking about, I love that. It's the digital proficiency, the critical thinking, all of the aspects of data verification, multiple sources. Also creating relevant information within that space, not just sit in a classroom. It's got to be usable. So when we do right skilling and reskilling in our experience, we always use it right away, so that you can see, okay, this is not just in a classroom, it's how I can use my mobile phone to do this. And there's lots of case studies there. The second point is in the context of, we've heard a lot about multi-sector, engagement, multi-stakeholderism. I'm losing all these isms. But what does that actually mean? In my experience, when we start to do things to address inequalities, like I gave that example of Pakistan and India, you look at that grassroots issue, cultural, social, economic, the power relations, and you target to break them. If you target to break them in that way, looking at collaboration, private sector collaboration, everybody over the last 3 days has said to me, we need money. We need money. That's what I keep hearing. So the only way to find money is if you come up with a partnership where there is money circulating, because that individual rural connectivity doesn't bring profit because you haven't got enough of a population there. So looking at the return of investment by creating those partnerships across the health sector, the mobile phone charging, education, fertilizers, everything that logistic companies, they all want to reach the rural areas. So that multi-stakeholder, multi-sector partnership has to be across industries, across age groups, so intergenerational, because you've got to make sure you don't exclude the elderly, women, people with disabilities, and in Asia Pacific for sure, the migrants, the refugees, the internally displaced people, that's a huge number I don't hear much of. The third one is policies. We've heard a lot about policies. It's one of the areas I love working in. Later on in life, I realized that without policy, nothing gets done. So I did my PhD in policy, so in ICT. So in this context, we need to have practical, implementable policies that can be measured. They need to be integrated across multiple ministries, so it creates that ecosystem where one pushes the other for implementation. In that context, then, you name the marginalized groups that you're targeting so that you can surely tick the box, you did it, but then you measure it. So it's not just on paper, it's executed that way. And the last thing is that we need to have a global metrics. We briefly touched upon it while we were waiting for this session. I am always afraid of information overload and writing reports and monitoring evaluations, which take up a big amount of time for civil society organizations when they take grants. That seems to be happening at the top level as well, and that worries me. I'm delighted that the G20 has now got social, looking at society in that system, but we need to sort of consolidate those voices so that they can actually affect real progress in this change and not have multiple organizations saying, we're going to do this, because then nothing gets done. So we need to channel our energies to make that engine strong and accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Salma. Michael, you spoke about cyber resilience in your opening remarks, and we do see that the companies are in a race of technological innovation and to rolling out smart products and solutions and everything. But what kind of design principles are they looking at while these smart products and these solutions are being conceived to make sure that they remain safe and they are consumer centric in the end, while of course remaining commercially viable?
Thank you, Waqas. There are two sets of design principles I'd like to focus on, two very broad sets. One is secure by design, the other is human rights by design. Admittedly, I normally avoid using those terms because they're easy to say, but very hard to do in reality. In terms of secure by design, I think it's important to recognize that based on Microsoft's insights of the global ICT ecosystem, we identified nation-state activity in over 120 countries in the preceding year, always increasing in sophistication and frequency. We saw actually a shift from destructive attacks, which is what we often see in the headlines, towards more cyber espionage, which can often be hidden and less visible, but still very harmful nevertheless. But actually we also see a blending of espionage, influence operations, and destructive activities too. In terms of targeting in this region, 17% of nation-state activity in this region was aimed at organizations and individuals in South Korea, 15% here in Taiwan, 13% in India, 6% in Malaysia, while Japan, Australia, Indonesia, and Thailand each had 5% of the nation-state targeting in this region. Very different countries, very different levels of digital maturity and ICT penetration, but also you see very different levels of targeting too. It is worth noting, particularly for those of us in this room, NGOs and think tanks remain top targets because they're often seen as soft access points for nation-state actors. The good news is that 80% of security incidents they are attributable to just missing basic security practices. Number one would be protecting user identities with multi-factor authentication. Actually, 90% of compromised accounts lacked strong authentication. That's actually not realistic in some countries, though, right, or some locations, because not everyone on the internet actually has access to a smartphone, and so how they can then conduct multi-factor authentication is not necessarily as easy as it might be for other users. But also it's important to apply software updates promptly to reduce exploitation risks. Again, not always easy if people have limited internet access or they're using older second-hand devices. But of course, the pace of technological change, and particularly AI and cybersecurity, has created new challenges that do require a careful balance, hence the focus of this panel, this closing plenary. And so in today's environment, ensuring that products are safe, secure, and inclusive is just as important as ensuring that they are innovative and commercially viable. And actually one way that, at least at Microsoft, we're trying to advance that is through something called the Secure Future Initiative, or SFI for short, which is intended to be a strategic company-wide response to the new threat landscape. There are a number of pillars or principles within the Secure Future Initiative itself. One I'll mention is AI-based cyber defense. The thinking here is that we can leverage AI to create essentially a cyber shield which can detect and respond to threats at speed and scale far faster than human intervention. We've already started to see that come into effect for a number of years now. Another benefit of AI is through Security Copilot. This combines large language models with security-specific insights to assist cybersecurity professionals in identifying and responding to threats, and also could help to close the cybersecurity talent gap which exists around the world, but particularly in low and middle income economies. It is still important to advocate for international norms, and so at Microsoft we continue to advocate for stronger international norms in cyberspace, and that includes efforts to protect critical infrastructure from nation attacks and recognize that critical infrastructure should be protected under international law. We could spend more time talking about the topic of responsible AI, but I know in this audience that's a topic that I think you're all relatively well briefed on and understand, but of course happy to discuss it more during the Q&A. But actually one thing I'd like to do just briefly is give an example of using principles and collaboration to address risks in innovation, specifically innovation of malicious uses of AI, and how we seek to do that in support of the right to democratic participation. Of course, 2024 is a major year for elections around the world. Over 40 countries hold elections, including in this region, Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Japan, Pakistan, and of course here in Taiwan earlier in the year. And just as Audrey was talking about, the rise of generative AI presents both opportunities and significant risks to democratic processes. So earlier this year in February, 20 companies, including Microsoft, launched a new tech accord to combat deceptive AI. That includes a commitment around prevention and detection, whereby companies are committed to invest in technology to prevent the creation and dissemination of AI-generated deceptive election content, as well as committing to provenance and transparency, whereby the companies will attach provenance signals to content and provide transparency in how AI is used, and also seek to increase public awareness and resilience. The fact is, this is not just a problem for 2024, but I think it is one example of whereby problems can be identified in advance. Some solutions can be brought to help mitigate those problems, not always to 100%, but of course that does require constant collaboration.
Thank you, Michael. I think this is the great details. So now we come to you. If you have a question, there are 2 mics at the front. You can just take the mic and ask a question to our panelists. I hope that the topic is interesting enough for you to think of a question. Otherwise, then, we're just gonna keep it between us and we can go on, we can go on for long. So for now, I don't see, oh, yeah, okay, please. While you state your question, try to limit it to like 1.5 minutes, or if it is a comment, so that everybody can take a chance, although I don't see anybody else in the queue, but still.
I don't think you're going to have a problem with me. My name is Rosemary Sinclair, and I'm the CEO of the .au domain administration for Australia. I had the privilege of hearing Audrey in Australia last week, and I asked her in that presentation about the concept of harnessing civil society. Today you talked about harnessing the social sector. I'm very attracted to this idea of harnessing because to me it reframes the position and role of civil society or the social sector from having to knock loudly on the door to say, listen to us, we have valuable things to say, to a position where that view, those perspectives are sought by design from the very beginning because the value of the diversity. You also mentioned today a new concept, maximising collective efficiency, which I think is something we can learn from as well, and then the G20 social. So my question, Wakas, is to ask the panel to comment on this new framing of how we deeply engage civil society, the social sector, in discussions that started off being very technical, but now we have a socio-technical system. So we can't just have one side of the discussion anymore. It has to be a socio-technical or multi-stakeholder discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Audrey, would you like to lead the panel on this?
Yeah, thank you for the great question. So in Taiwan, when I was the minister in charge of social innovation, we very specifically coined this very umbrella term, social innovation organizations or the social sector, which includes the traditionally defined civil society organizations, but also co-ops or with profit but for purpose organizations like social entrepreneurs and many other kinds of organizations as well. The reason why that we put everyone under the social sector umbrella is exactly as you said. It is not just about advocacy or about protesting or about knocking on the doors, but rather it is about demonstrating, about showing a better way of doing things by prototyping locally. And I would just share one mechanism. There's many mechanisms of doing that in Taiwan. One is called the Presidential Hackathon, where every year we run this more than 200 project hackathon. I think this particular year is about the health issue. And so any CSO or any social entrepreneur, any innovators can demonstrate their local innovations in a local social technological way. And there's a quadratic voting round. And so for people who made it to top 20, they received coaching and so on. And the top 5 ended up getting the trophy of a presidential commitment of basically taking whatever local infrastructure that they require or they have built prototypically and promising that it will become the digital public infrastructure the next fiscal year. And so it is a way of crowdsourcing not the implementation, but rather the agenda of what counts as essential service, what counts as innovation, what counts as public infrastructure. And so I do believe that it is like people first PPP, when the people, the social sector sets the direction and the public sector amplifies it and the private sector implements it, it tends to be much better than the other way around, which is a more traditional PPP that affects the people and then people demonstrate different way of doing it, mitigating the harm. But it is much better if you can start by demonstrating a way that does not have that sort of harm because it is co-created by people and with the people closer to the pain.
Co-created by the people. I love the ending of your answer. Audrey, please, sir.
Thank you. My name is Izumi. I'm trying to sort of recall all these past 15 years of APrIGF. How far have we come? And also seemingly the gap between the tech or tech capabilities or tech people and that of the so-called society or the human institutions are seemingly widening if we compare with what was there 15 years ago. That's kind of my pessimistic observation. I hope I'm wrong. But even though Audrey mentioned rather positive or more of, say, like optimistic observations and backed by what you have done collectively in Taiwan, which may not be the case in my or other countries outside. I still am very worried that this gap will increase, combined with certain organizations or institutions are very much capable of handling these new powers, like, say, generative AI is a good example. Although you have the platforms or servers and all this money financially, and the large ones behind yourself, as some sponsors are like that. Are we really going to close the gaps? How can we? And I don't mean that to target you, Audrey, only, but any other comments from Raj or any other folks that we very appreciated. By the way, thank you, Audrey, for a few years ago, we had organized an online discussion where you came in, thanks to Go-Away's introduction with Dave Farber, if you remember. And I was in between you and Dave. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So, since you mentioned the sponsors, Raj, would you like to answer this one?
You want me to answer as the sponsor, or as... Look, Izumi, so for a number of years now, I'll try and answer your question, but in a slightly different, or address your question and or comment, but in a slightly different way. So for the last maybe 5 or 6 years, I've really been concerned about the new digital divides we're starting to create. The term digital divide's been around for pretty much forever since we started doing ICT 4D and all that sort of things, right? But if you look at just the disconnect that we have between economies, just in this region as an example, then you have disconnect within an economy as well, right, depending on where one is located. How fast you can access the internet, what sort of device you have, what you can afford, they are actually creating new digital divides. And then, what you mentioned about Gen AI and other technologies that, largely the Western world is moving ahead with, which, needs resources, including financial and technical skills and et cetera, et cetera. What does it mean for those who are not able to afford all those, right? Because that gap will keep on widening, it will keep on widening. And then, of course, there's the opportunity cost, or the opportunity lost, as I like to say, because you'll have these certain economies and countries around the world which will take off. They'll accelerate their development even further. They'll benefit from the technologies. Their industries will benefit. But that will not flow down to every economy around the world, as we've seen time and time and again over the decades, right? And it's not just an IT problem. It's a general development problem. So I don't have an answer as to how we fix this, but I'm not so sure that we don't talk about this enough. We seem to sort of gloss over it a little bit. And now, because of all this other fancy, sexy stuff that's about, we stop talking about the root cause that exists there. So I hope that adds a little bit of food for thought, but you know.
I think that's straight from the heart, Raj. Thank you. Rukmal, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Akash. I really appreciate the fact that question you raised during the panel about how do we make sure these innovations are safe and inclusive for everyone. So we talked about the safety aspect and inclusion, and right now I think Raj brought up a very important thing that's relating to my question, which is the affordability of the devices, which is which is getting less and less, and thus maximizing the digital divide in a way. Say, for example, this device I'm wearing costs around $3,000, but the same functionality can be obtained using the Meta glasses, which cost a fraction of that. So, and this is also repurposed Google glasses. So we see big tech encroaching into territories where the community has built resilient tech. What I'm talking about is many of the open source software and many of the sort of small scale device manufacturing, even the AI that has been happening over the years is now currently being taken over by the big tech. So I feel this is slowing down the progress that we can actually achieve, because big tech is already regulated and they are responsible, which was echoed in the sentiments shared during this panel as well, to how, I mean, they have to be responsible. So in this dichotomy where you have to be responsible and then you support the upcoming technologies and looking at their safety, so in this kind of situation, isn't there a way that has been identified by big tech, including Microsoft, to expedite the process of innovation amidst all the regulation that's there to sort of make sure it's secure and safe to use? Thank you.
Thank you, Rukmal. I think, Michael, you can probably respond to this with some additional comments from Salma, perhaps? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm actually going to go back to the previous point made by, I think Rosemary?
Izumi.
No, Azumi. Azumi-san. The issue that I wanted to bring up was with the divides and how Raj was talking about it. I think that's probably one of the most important things for us to talk about, especially post-COVID. The impact in society and the gaps and the affordability. Even if you look at the United Kingdom, women are making the choice whether they feed their family or pay for the broadband. So we've got basic survivability issues that actually force us to make those decisions not to be connected, not to have our children connected. So I actually think we need to have a concerted effect around the Asia-Pacific region. Is probably one of the multiple growing divides if you look at the stats from the World Bank. We not only have the gender divide, but the digital divide. We have the economic divide that's growing. We have the educational divide. And we have the political divide. The representation of women in politics, in government, is low. It's alarming to see male ministers represent women. In Asia-Pacific, I wonder, where did all the ladies go? So when I look at this, I think that we need to have some form of coherent plan going forward that ticks all of those issues. When we talk about marginalization and inclusion and innovation, many wonderful examples I've heard now, but the challenge will be to operationalize that into something usable to address those issues that we were talking about, and leverage the G20. Again, to the point that Rosemary made, it's really lovely to see that Brazil not only took that social as a new component, but it went from Indonesia to India to Brazil. It's developing the South. Suddenly said, what about the society? Because the intersection between technology and society is what's causing a lot of issues and expanding the rate of divides. So I'm delighted to, again, use the IGF as an area to push this discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Salma. Michael, would you?
Sure thing. Thank you, Salma. Thank you, Wakas. Thank you for the questions. And similar to Salma, if I must just have to take an opportunity to address Rosemary and Azumi's questions as well in a slightly combined way. I think one of the worst cases, of which there are many, in which we are seeing a lack of harnessing of civil and social sectors and continued power imbalances actually is happening within the United Nations, where we see member states mandate processes which specifically or implicitly don't harness civil society enough. The open-ended working group on ICT security would be a good example of that, where of course, member states have a vote. That's absolutely the way it should be. But civil society, the private sector, academia can still have a voice. And yet the way some of these processes are set up is that they don't, or at best there is a 3-minute timed intervention. The microphone's cut off and then that's it. And of course, therefore, participants don't travel all the way to New York to do that because why bother? And so I think all member states in the UN system, and of course recognizing that it's a complicated topic here in Taiwan, but all member states in the UN system should be better at making sure that there is better harnessing, to use that term. And then in terms of the other question, my interpretation of it was essentially the gap between legislation or regulation and innovation. Of course, there's this using accessibility as a very valid case study. There's, of course, this concept or term that regulation is incremental, innovation is exponential. And there's a lot of truth to that there's just inevitably this gap that happens all the time. But I think one positive change in some companies, in some geographies, is a recognition that regulation is a good thing and we shouldn't be afraid of it. And that former kind of mindset that regulation stifles innovation actually is completely false, and we shouldn't take that approach. Instead, we need to recognize that across the board, whether it's with regards to vulnerable populations or just majority populations anyway, these are incredibly influential, sometimes potentially harmful technologies that we're looking at, and regulation needs to be embraced, not turned away from.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions, and with my one eye on the clock, I think, oh, yeah, one more. Right, so you need to go to the mic.
Hi, my name is Chester. I used to live in Hong Kong, and now I'm in Europe, in Spain. So I think a lot of us know that we have freshly enacted the EU AI Act. So, and it brings up the question that I guess many of us here would feel that in the days when I grew up, and I guess to the point where I was developing my career in ICT, when we hear innovation, we cheered. We were happy about it. We were excited. But now I think maybe in the past 10 years, we hear more fear, and I think the EU Act, no matter what I guess the legislative intent behind it, or maybe what it's saying, I think I'm sensing fear more than encouragement. So I guess I'm not sure if this relates to Mr. Isui's question about the divide and the gap, but I'm hoping the panelists maybe can enlighten us. If there's any practical way in addressing this issue, I mean, with more policies or with something that I guess work that we can really kind of turn this around. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think this is a great question, and this is sort of a great scene setter for your closing statements, all of you, right? I think we can all agree. Raj, you first.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, we have another one. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Ahita from Indian Youth IGF, and also I work in the cybersecurity industry. So I think there were lots of points mentioned at the intersection of AI and cybersecurity. And something that as young people we discuss extensively is on deepfakes. So my question is that there are organizations out there, including the organization that I'm currently part of. We are working on creating community tools for the community to identify deepfake videos, for example. So how do we ensure that these community-driven or tools for the community are integrated in this entire process and are, because we are talking about execution, not just about ideation. So how do we ensure that happens? And yeah, I'd just like to hear from all of you on this.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a good question. So we have two now, and I think this is a bit of a challenge for, I think, our panelists to include both of these questions in your closing statements, and just to address on what she said and what Jesse was talking about, the fear of, unknown, I would call it. So, you want to go first, Salma? Okay.
This will be my 1-minute closing remark, but I want to address the last two questions because they're related and they're lovely. So first of all, thank you for pointing out the word fear rather than cheer. As a person who's been talking about the risk from AI, I must reassure you that I am teaching AI for SDGs because I believe they do have power. So there is positive more than negative. With the ecosystem cybersecurity, I'm working with the universities, as I've said. The G20, again, with the German government, has an opportunity for all innovations to come up and enter competitions where there's a support mechanism in place. So grassroots innovations are greatly welcomed. To fit into the ecosystem, absolutely, they are plugged into the ecosystem. The only thing I advise my students is protect your IP. You need to make sure that you're safe, and I'm sure that my colleague from Microsoft will talk about that. So within universities, a lot of innovation centers have been established, which are linked to a nurturing ecosystem. I've just come from Malaysia, where one of the biggest priority areas for us is cybersecurity and AI ecosystem development for innovation, entrepreneurs, and startups in the local grassroots level. So I'd love to talk to you about that later on, but we want to make sure that it's really Asia-Pacific voices being heard and actually being valued and integrated. So I'm looking forward to more youth participation and innovation in nurturing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Audrey, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah, so to continue on Salma's point, I do think that fear comes from the lack of steerability. Like if you have a piece of technology, but you cannot steer it towards social, local, community innovation, then obviously there is fear, right? There is this shortage of whether it's resource in terms of capital or knowledge, whether it's shortage in terms of proficiency or competence. There's this general idea that if this thing moves, then my society moves, and I'm not going to be able to steer it. And so to me, whether it is the EU AI Act or whether it is the interoperability requirements of many other EU acts, to me, one of the most fruitful way to think about them is to invite for more steerable alternatives, invite for steerable alternatives that either are done with the community in the local use cases, or is starts from the community, which is, it's important to me that both in the EU AI Act and in the Californian one now, there's carve-outs, right, for open source fine-tuning for the kind of use that does not cost a lot, less than 1 million or something like that, and that steers meaningfully toward your community expectation of how AI should be integrated with the community, and there should be a certain like liability shield or other kind of protection for this kind of grassroots innovation. So I think with careful thought, we can create an incentive where if you're proprietary, you're big tech, and so on, then you end up becoming liable for most of the downstream effects that your product has on the society. But if you're actively working upstream to steer that technology in a way that is compatible with open innovation, then you should be shielded from that liability. And also there needs to be incentive designed, such as the presidential hackathon, to harness that kind of social sector innovation.
Thank you, Audrey. Great thoughts. Raj?
Where to begin? How much time do I have?
Well, you were in deep thoughts, so you can take 1.5.
Look, I'll try and keep this simple. So I remember the days, many, many decades ago, when we, and I was involved with the telecom industry then, we did not want regulation. And we fought tooth and nail to ensure that regulation did not come into place. So I'm talking the 90s here, right? And it's somewhat ironic or amusing to me that these days we now have big tech saying, no, we want regulation, particularly if we look at the AI sphere in particular, right? So it's amazing how things change over time, isn't it? You know, so that's one. Number two, when we start talking about regulations and policies, I think we need to also recognize that, you know, one of my friends used to say the problem with policies and regulations is they don't allow me to do anything, right? So I think there needs to be a balance found between what it can create in the future, or what, you know, you don't want it to stop doing something that will lead to something else in the future, right? So how do you define that? It's a very hard question to answer. But if we go with the whip and stick approach and crack down on everything, then you start asking, then what you're basically saying is, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, right, from regulation. So I think it needs, obviously we are out of time, so it needs a bit more thought. But I want to leave you with something that one of our grantees wrote in a report to us, and it's actually going back to the innovation, inclusion, and connectivity theme of the panel. In the report, they said, it's not about getting the internet there, it's about it not dominating their life. And this particular people were working in a rural, underserved area in Asia. And when I read that, and it was highlighted to me by one of my team members, I found it very profound. Because sometimes I think we lose sight of that. And I think it's some of the problems we're facing today. So thank you.
Yep. Michael?
Thank you. If I may address Chester's point on fear. Chester, I think you're absolutely right about fear. I actually would disagree with one thing, though. I don't think that's new. And one reason why I don't think it's new is, I think about 120 years ago, when the first escalator was installed on the London Underground, a man with a wooden leg was hired to ride the escalator up and down all day long to prove it was safe. I don't know what is the 2024 equivalent of a man with a wooden leg to demonstrate safety, for example, in the age of AI. Would love to hear thoughts on that. But there is a school of thought that it takes time to be comfortable with new technologies, and I think that's entirely true. So what are the sources of comfort? Audrey mentioned steerability. I think that's true. I think another source of comfort comes from knowledge, and knowing and understanding how technologies work. But actually, there are some that you just can't really understand. I'll be very honest. I don't understand how electricity works, but I know that generally I can trust the devices that I buy by virtue of the, ensuring they use the right principles. There's regulation, there's liability, as was mentioned, and there's transparency in the marketplace. So those things help to alleviate some of that fear, but that fear will always be there.
Thank you. So this marks the end of our panel discussion. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience, and I request a huge round of applause for our panelists. Thank you. And I guess I'll hand over to you, Joyce, right?
Hello, okay. Please don't start leaving. I know we are at the end of the day, but we're not quite done yet. So I have the unenviable task of making sure you stay in the room. No excuses of going to the loo. So while we're just waiting for the stage to be cleared as we go into the final stretch, those of you who know me, I love interaction when it comes to the audience, and I love for my sessions to always be very interactive. So let's do a quick poll. In this week, if you've had, let's say, 1 to 2 bubble teas, raise your hand. 1 to 2 bubble teas. Okay, if you've had 5 bubble teas this week, so we're talking almost 1 every day. Oh, there are. Raise your hand, raise your hand. So 3, 4. Okay, now the real question. Who has had more than 5 bubble teas this week? Anybody? Okay, good. Do we have, we do have 1 hand, so, and more hands. Okay, well, this is the APrIGF, and I don't want to have to talk about health issues and diabetes and that sort of thing, but do take care of your health is what I can say. So we're just gonna let the panelists come back and do a quick group photo. I think we were in too much of a rush to try and change up the stage. Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you. Let's start the closing session proper. So I think we've all enjoyed the facilities in this venue, and being here in Taipei has been such a wonderful joy for all of us. And so I want to invite our local host from TWNIC, Jo-Fan Yu, who is also the board member and CEO of TWNIC, to give us her closing remarks.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I hope you are not too tired of seeing me again on the stage. I promise this is the last time. Thank you for all your participation. I hope you enjoy the forum and then also enjoy the discussion and engagement. And with the WISES Plus 20 in 2025, I believe this year's APrIGF is particularly important because it represents the voices from the Asia Pacific before this critical moment. So I believe the discussion will not stop here, but also in the coming IGF and the next year as well. And we are really honored to be the local host this year. So may I allow me, to spend some time to thank my teams, because without their hard work in the past few months, we cannot have this event. So the Anthony, and Xiping, and Peyton, and David, and yes, Guini, and Ian, and Jinghen, and Yanjie. Okay, thank you. And of course, we thank you for all your participations. We hope you have some time to explore this beautiful city and have a safe flight back home. Thank you. See you next time in Taipei. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jo-Fan. And thank you for keeping your remarks really very short. You are the role model for the rest of our speakers. Next, we have the Secretariat of APrIGF, Edmund Chung, CEO for .Asia organization.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And I will be the bad example, because I want to say a few things. Actually, this is very tall. I'm very short, sorry. So this year is the 15th installment of the APrIGF. And at .Asia, we feel very much honored to serve as the secretariat for the APrIGF since its beginning. And we really thank the community for your continued trust for us. Let me first and foremost also thank our host, TWNIC, and thank you, Kenny, for putting forth the proposal to host APrIGF. Thank you, Jo-Fan, and your team for great work to actually putting and implementing the APrIGF 2024. And it's not just the conference this time. We have actually more than 10 concurrent activities, pre-events and side events. And this is actually something I must say is a very exciting development for us at the APrIGF. And I really hope that the wider community will come to see APrIGF as a hub event for stakeholders to gather, network, and talk about internet governance here. So TWNIC has really set a high bar for us again, after 8 years ago when Kuo-wei actually led a remarkable APrIGF here as well. So thank you very much to the TWNIC team for bearing with us from the Secretariat team for many demands and last-minute requests. So please join me in another round of applause to Jo-Fan herself. And of course, the TWNIC team. Now, from the Secretariat, that's the reason why I need to take a little bit more time. Wanted to report a little bit on the statistics on this APrIGF. So we have a total of 1,060 persons coming from 63 countries and economies registered for APrIGF. Of those, Of those, we have actually a great gender balance with about 49% male, 46% female, and 5% identifying as non-binary or preferred not to state. And out of which 644 actually checked in. This is a pretty big APrIGF year, over 600 people joining us on site, and another 1,700 logged in across the different online sessions. So, and this does not include the many others who joined the 5 local hubs from Bangladesh, India, the Philippines, Thailand, and Samoa. So among them, we have almost 200 speakers and moderators across 27 official APrIGF sessions. And I want to make an observation. Of those 27 sessions, actually 5 of them had AI in the title itself. That represents almost 20%. Not to mention the many other discussions that included AI. Last year, actually, at my remarks, I mentioned that the AI governance and internet governance, the line between them is blurring. So it seems pretty evident to me now, and just now the panel as well, and the discussion that AI is part of internet governance. This morning, I heard a speaker mention something I really agreed very much. He explained that the question of AI governance is not just algorithm governance, but also what feeds into the algorithms, the data, our data through the internet. And that relates to data privacy, digital rights, what I believe is best understood as what I call personal digital sovereignty, and that has everything to do about the internet governance. So as AI evolves and becomes part of our daily lives, responsible innovation must be informed by truly multi-stakeholder dialogue. And that's what the IGF movement is about. And that leads me to add another part, which is the global multi-stakeholder model and global multi-stakeholder internet governance itself must evolve. For APrIGF, we actually have a 10-year-old innovation that was the introduction of the synthesis document. So I encourage you, and I really hope that more people can go to put your thoughts in to comments.aprigf.asia. And finally, echoing the recent output from the Net Mundial Plus 10, the IGF itself, of course, has proven to have convening power. And here at APrIGF, I can't think it can be evidenced by the multitude of side events that we have this week. And if it's strengthened, it can be consolidated as the preferred space for information sharing and coordination among digital governance processes. So we hope that you will continue to help us evolve APrIGF. So I think there should be a survey QR code coming up. Please come in and add to the APrIGF survey at aprigf.asia/survey or use the QR code. Now, finally, I guess all of the credit must go to all of the credit of the continued improvement of the APrIGF must actually go to my great team from .asia who made me look good and cover my own blunders, especially Jenna, please join me in a round of applause. Pio, and of course, our lead for APrIGF work, whom all of you know, Jasmine. Hey, Jasmine. So, in order to evolve what is happening here, we really need your help, your continued participation, and facilitating that community effort is at the heart of .Asia's contribution serving as a secretariat. We look forward to continue working with you and look forward to many more years of APrIGF. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edmund. Our next speaker is the chair of Asia Pacific Youth IGF, Organizing Committee 2024, Samir Galot.
fine, I think. Yeah. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Distinguished guests, participants, and esteemed colleagues, good evening. My name is Sameer Kahlot. I'm co-chair for the organizing committee of Asia Pacific Youth IGF 2024. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to share the reflections on the engagements of the Asia Pacific Youth IGF 2024 held on day 0 of the APrIGF under the overarching theme Connecting Generations, Forging a Responsible Digital Future Through Collaboration and Policy Innovation. Under this theme, we discussed issues at the confluence of security and trust, resilience, and ethical emergence of AI. This engagement saw participation from over 90 on-site participants and 170 total attendees in total participating from across APAC region, including remote participant tuning in from the youth-led YIGF local hubs in the Philippines and Pakistan. Together, we engaged in a rich dialogue drawing on the diverse perspective of speakers and attendees from various backgrounds and regions to empower the next generation in navigating the digital landscape responsibly. This discussion could not be more timely, offering an opportunity to provide a unified digital journey in an era marked by rapid technological advancement. With the unwavering commitment to advocate for youth and child rights, democratize internet access, and ensure online safety through the innovative regulation of emerging technologies, to address challenges such as enhancing digital literacy, promoting cyber hygiene, and empowering marginalized communities, which remain central to our mission. We further explored the transformative role of AI in the education in alignment with the United Nations IGF Youth Track 2024, and panel discussion reflecting the relevance of the multi-stakeholder model. I'm pleased to inform that this esteemed gathering that we have also developed a 3-year blueprint for the period 2024 to 2027, which is crafted in collaboration with all the youth IGF leaders within the APAC region. This blueprint envisions promoting multi-stakeholderism, especially focusing on empowering youth to drive impactful change and transforming and amplifying our mission and strengthen this multi-stakeholder community. Though initially we faced numerous challenges in organizing this year's forum, but we successfully overcame them with the generous supports of our community partners. For this, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the NIC team for covering the accommodation for 14 fellows and providing venue and logistical support for on-site participants, and .Asia for their unwavering support for the Youth IGF Fellows, which is the longest standing Youth IGF initiative according to the UN IGF records. And last but not the least, Net Mission for facilitating the collective efforts and actions of our youth community. Additionally, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the ISOC team for sending their delegation from Latin America and seasoned community professionals, including members from the public sectors, for joining the intergenerational conversation at YIGF. As the Asia-Pacific region emerges as a global leader, home to the world's largest population and the highest number of the internet users, it is imperative for all of us to harness the potential of this emerging technologies to advance regional interest and support sustainable growth. On this note, the insights from our one-day engagement on the critical intersection of education, technology, truth, and youth will serve as a foundation for our ongoing efforts. Let's work together to connect, harness, innovate, protect, and sustain as we build a digital landscape that is safe, inclusive, and empowering for all, especially for the youth. This is perhaps the most significant indicator of what our efforts thus far has achieved and how much more we have yet to accomplish. As we conclude, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who made this year's YIGF an incredible, enriching, and insightful experience. A special thanks to our organizers, speakers, sponsors, and committee members. Local Hub organizers and coordinator, JC from the Department of Information and Communication Technology, Philippines, Harisa Shahid from Pakistan, Annie and Parveen, they are also from Pakistan. Our organizing committee members, especially our remote team lead, Bia and Sucheta, digital content specialist, Khushi for sharing real-time update on social media, and my fellow co-chair, Ankita Rathi and Nataya, Luke for his extended on-site support, and our head coordinator, Jenna, who has been a dedicated torchbearer with great enthusiasm in this field for the past 6 years. Can we have a round of applause for all these people who made this possible? Now we all have to keep this conversation alive to stay engaged and bring pragmatic changes. The future of IG is in our hands, and I have every confidence that it will be bright and impactful because of your dedication. Lastly, I would like to thank all the youth for their active participation. I urge you to continue this engagement by joining MSG, where your voices can profoundly influence and shape the future of region's internet governance discourse. I will conclude with this thought. We are the generation with the power to shape the future of humanity. The choices which we will make today will define the legacy we will leave for tomorrow. As we wrap up, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to each one of you. Safe travel as we return back to our home countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samir. I'd like to now invite Aris Ignacio, Vice Chair of APrIGF, Multi-Stakeholder Steering Group, MSG.
Thank you so much. Okay, I will be also a bad example. Sorry for that. Sorry, Joyce. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, dear colleagues, and esteemed virtual participants, a good and wonderful day to all of you. As we wrap up this year's APrIGF, I stand here feeling hopeful and very inspired. Over the past few days, we have come together from across the Asia-Pacific region and beyond, all driven by the shared goals to shape the future of the internet. Actually, this year, under the theme Evolving Ecosystems, Enduring Principles, Shaping Responsible Internet Governance, as if you don't know as of yet. So we've explored many challenges that come living in a digital world. We talked about how to keep our digital spaces safe and trustworthy, how to stay strong against the growing cyber threats that we are experiencing right now, and how responsibly to govern new technologies like AI. It's artificial intelligence, it's not Aris Ignacio. The discussions have been very deep, the viewpoints were varied, and the results encouraging. This year, the voices of the younger generation, more specifically the fellows, were not just included. They are at the front and center of our conversation. And as of this time, I would like to request each and every fellow out there to please stand, to be recognized, because you have done a hell of a job this week. So please, may I request everyone, please be recognized. Thank you. Our young and upcoming and seasoned fellows brought new ideas and challenged us to think in different ways, reminding us to consider the long-term impact of their decisions, of our decisions. Their involvement highlights the importance of including everyone, no matter what their age, in the realm of internet governance. As we conclude this event, let us take with us the lessons we've learned and the connections we've made during this forum. The challenges ahead are really not small, but neither our determination. Continue to engage and participate in the discussions, join mailing lists, and let your voices be heard. In line with this, I highly encourage and please provide your inputs in the synthesis document, as this is one of the most important outputs from this event that validates what multi-stakeholderism is all about. The internet has the power to change, and it changed lives. But it is up to us to make sure that change is inclusive, secure, and responsible. On behalf of the MSG, I would like to thank the organizers, especially TWNIC, Kenny, Jofan, and the whole team. Again, let's give them a very warm, big round of applause. Okay, they brought the event here and who serve as the main reason in bringing all the discussions in this very lovely city of Taipei. I hope you have enjoyed the food as much as I do. I hope you have experienced a little bit of tipsiness within the week, but I hope all of those things you will bring along as you go and continue in these discussions. Also, I would like to thank the tireless members and co-chairs of the program, events, the fellowship, and the stakeholder engagement committee of APrIGF. These particular people have tireless nights, sleepless indeed, but at the end of the day, they were able to come up with the lineup that is necessary. I would also like to thank the management and staff of NTUH Convention Center. Actually, the interpreters who are on the back, I think we need to also give them a round of applause for doing a wonderful job. Yeah. Okay. The sponsors, as you could see on my back, there are a lot, but we really need to thank them. The hardworking .Asia who serve as the secretariat for this year, and hopefully they still continue for next year. The session proponents, moderators, and speakers, the food servers, the utilities, the ushers, and the registration team, and all of the volunteers who made this event possible. Your dedication and passion have been the driving force behind this forum's success. And last but not the least, I would like to thank each and every one of you who attended either on-site or online, because this will really not be possible without you. Let us celebrate and give ourselves, again, a wonderful, big round of applause. Lastly, there's a last. Let us carry forward the momentum from this forum with renewed determination as caretakers of an evolving internet. The work of internet governance is never complete, as it evolves with each passing day, as we all do. Looking forward, I'm really looking forward for the next edition of this endeavor. And will it be either online or on-site, as we cross paths again in this shared journey toward a better digital future. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a wonderful and safe travels back home. But before that, I'm still here. I was given a very difficult task to announce. Recently, we had our elections for the vice chair of MSG for APrIGF, and I am privileged and honored to announce to you the one who got elected, and I would like him to come up on stage to say a short message to each and every one of you so that you will not see me after this one. So I would like to announce our elected vice chair for the MSG or APrIGF, Mr. Ashriwar Tripathi. Thank you.
So thank you so much, the multi-stakeholder group, for your trust in me and in re-electing me as the vice chair. I look forward to continuing serving the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aris, and congratulations to Ashwat. Sorry, I have to walk back to my script. And finally, we're going to announce that the APrIGF 2025 will be held in Nepal. And so we have Baburam Ariel, who will be the next APrIGF 2025 host. He's the founder CEO for Internet Governance Institute in Nepal. Baburam, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. The chair of Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum, vice chairs, especially thanking new vice chair and another vice chair just spoke, and all the guests of honors, local host of APrIGF 2024, and the member of MSG, sponsors, secretariat, and all the fellow participants. Good evening in Taipei. Unfortunately, I missed this evening there. I was there at the 0-day time, but because of some work back to home, I came back to Kathmandu. So I believe that it was very pleasure. It was fantastic edition of APrIGF 2024. I'd like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to the organizers, speakers, and participants who have made this forum a resounding success. And this is very challenging for me and my team to host in Nepal. That TWIGF set an example of best event this year in Taipei. As we remember that we were very excited to host APrIGF in 2020 in Nepal. Unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, we went to virtual in 2020, and we went to hybrid model. Opening and closing was there in Kathmandu, but unfortunately, you couldn't travel to Nepal because of the pandemic. But this is my pleasure that MSG accepted to host Internet Governance Institute as a host and Internet Society Nepal chapter as a co-host for this round of upcoming APrIGF 2025. And I hope this will be an excellent legacy continued in Kathmandu by our effort. We'll try our best to make this event very successful as compared to our past events. It will be more inclusive, it will be more content-oriented, it will be more youth-oriented, and you believe Kathmandu is very best and present time in October, and this will be a very good time. Be prepared for coming to Nepal, be prepared for traveling to Nepal, and I hope we have a very short video. I'd like to request the technical team to play this short video that appeals welcoming you all in Kathmandu. Thank you very much for your kind acceptance for our proposal, and safe travels for you, all of you who are coming after this successful edition of APrIGF 2024 from Taiwan back to your home. Thank you very much for this opportunity for me at this evening. Joyce, thank you very much, and I would like to request the technical team to broadcast this short video, and I would like to acknowledge Ananda Gautam from my team and Ashirwad Tripathi as well as co-organizer, co-host of APrIGF 2025. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Baburam. Thank you. All right, we're in the home stretch. Now, we have to work off those bubble tea calories, okay? There was a reason I asked those questions. So everybody raise your hands up, both hands. And then I want you to do this on your wrist. That's right. Now, we're going to thank the local host, TWNIC, the Secretariat, and the MSG for your hard work this past year. Big applause. We want to also thank the technical crew and volunteers without whom this meeting would not be remotely possible, pun intended. And finally, the biggest applause of all, so really, put your energy in. I want to thank you, the participants, for making the discussions here at APrIGF 2024 meaningful and rich this past week. So thank you to all of you. Big applause for all of you. Some housekeeping announcements. For those who were in the closing plenary speakers, please do a group photo later on. This has nothing to do with the rest of you, unfortunately. The MSG does have a meeting after this, unfortunately, so we're not quite done yet. You're not off the hook. So room 301 or remote participation. And with this, I declare APrIGF 2024 closed. So closing ceremony speakers, please come to the front for your group photo.
Go, go, go.